Welcome back to the PhoneGap Essentials course on NetTuts Plus Premium. In this lesson we're going to be looking at the Camera API and the Capture, Get Image and Get Video methods. The Camera API gives us access to the device's default camera application. With PhoneGap it is not yet possible to have an instance of the camera within your application. The principal method in the Camera API is the getPicture method. With getPicture, we need to pass in a success callback, an error callback, and options. The options are the most important part and allow us to decide whether we want to get an image from the photo gallery, from the actual camera, whether we want to return our image information as a base64 string, or as a file location. So let's have a look at the camera options in more detail. Here is a typical camera options object with all of the different options laid out. Some of the options we have access to are quality, which is a number from 0 to 100, which will represent the quality of our image, how compressed the image is. We have our destination type. This is very important as it allows us to retrieve not an image but a data URL. This is basically the image represented in a base64 string. With this you can embed the image directly into your application without referencing the file system. You can of course also return a file system reference. We have our picture source type, which can either be the photo library, the camera, or the saved photo album. We can allow the user to edit their photo before sending it to the application. We can choose encoding of JPEG or PNG. You can choose the target width or height. This allows us to scale our image before it arrives at our application. We can also choose media type. This only works when we're selecting from the photo library or the photo album. We can choose to filter our media based on it being a picture, a video, or all media. There is also a correct orientation parameter. This will help us correct the orientation of our photo if it was taken horizontally or vertically. We can choose to save the photo directly to the album. And there are some popover options to control the iPad camera popover in iOS. With the capture.captureImage method, however, our options are much more limited, but we can request that a user takes more than one image, which could be helpful depending on your needs. And with captureImage, your callback will always be passed an array of media files where you can get their file paths on the device's file system. Video capture works in exactly the same way. And unlike audio capture and image capture, video capture is the only way to record video from your device. So let's have a look at an example. From Eclipse, open up your index.js file. I'll also ask you to open up your index.html as we're going to make a small change to the HTML file. Okay, starting off from your index.html file, all we need to do is add in an image tag. You'll notice that the image tag is empty, it has no source. But we have an ID of image, height 100% and width 100%. Now let's open up index.js. And let's make a call to a new function we're going to create called useGetPicture. Okay, let's start our call to the Camera API to open up the default camera application. It's attached to the navigator object .camera.getPicture, and we need to pass in a success callback, a fail callback, and an options object. Let's fill out our options object. We're going to need a quality. We'll set this to 75. This is kind of like your JPEG quality from Photoshop. Next we need a destination type. We're going to retrieve a data URL so we can insert the image directly into our application. Our source type will be our camera, Our encoding type will be JPEG, and we'll use correct orientation. Next, we need to do something with that image. So on photo success, we'll receive an image data object. Actually, it's a string. It's a base64 encoded representation of the image data. So, you'll remember we gave our image tag an ID of image. Let's create a reference to that, and we can set the image source equal to our image data. Now when you want to use base64 as an image, you need to put this at the start of your image source. Data:image tells us that we want to create an image from a string. JPEG is the image encoding, and base64 is the data encoding. Now we just need to add our image data onto that, and we should be able to see it in our application. Let's take a look. And before we export, let's not forget to create an onFail callback. In the case of failure, we'll just create an alert box with the fail message. Now if we export to the emulator, we won't actually be able to use the camera. But, just for testing, you can take a photo, accept the photo, and you'll see it printed into the application. At the moment it's coming through sideways, and this is just an error of the emulator. We can export to device, and you'll see that it works fine. If I export device, you'll see it's instantly opened up the camera application. Taking a photo, will ask me if I want to save that photo. Clicking on yes will take us into our application with the photo embedded in the test zone div. Let's not forget that we can also set our source type as the photo library. This is very useful if you want to create an application that helps users share their photos. Let's export that into the emulator and see what happens. So as you can see, it's instantly opened up the gallery and is asking us to select a picture. If we select one, the picture is then added to the test zone div. Back in our index.js, I also wanted to show you how to use the image capture API. We'll comment out use get picture and create a new one called use image capture. So we access it in the same way we accessed the audio capture method, which is via navigator.device.capture capture image. We have a success callback, a fail callback, and an options object. We've set the option limit to 2. This will mean that the user will be required to take 2 photos. Let's block out our on capture success. Our success callback will be passed an array of media files. We can use a loop to iterate through them, and for each one we'll print to the console the path which we get from media files index full path, and we'll print that to the console. Let's try this out in the emulator. Okay, it's requiring us to take a photo. Okay, and a second photo. And we've been returned back to our app, but in our log you'll see file path, and it has printed out the file path on the SD card, DCIM camera, with the file name. All that's left now is for us to try and use the video capture method. We'll create a new function called use video capture, and rather than blocking out these methods, we're actually just going to copy and paste the methods we used for image capture. That is the one advantage of the Capture API, that it gives you a very consistent way to capture audio, video, and images. So we'll change the name here. Instead of Capture Image, we're using Capture Video, but the rest of the interface is exactly the same. We'll call this on Video Capture Success. Our on Fail callback can be exactly the same. Change this, the callback name, and here instead of just writing file path, we'll write video file path. So let's try this out in the emulator. So now we're recompiling the app. Okay, it's asking us to record video. It's taken us straight to the record video application. When I click on record, we see a number counting here, the number of seconds we've recorded. I hit stop, and I can accept that. And we're being asked to record another video. Recording a few seconds, and stop. Okay. And you can see here in the log, video file path, MNT, SD card, DCIM, camera, and then the video name, .3GP, which is the native video format for Android. Okay, that's all for this lesson. In the past couple of lessons, we've seen 3 APIs, and we've also seen that there's a bit of overlap in the functionality between some of these APIs. You'll now understand the difference between the Camera API and the Capture API. Situations like this can be a bit confusing for beginners to a new framework. So it's important to understand what the APIs do, what their differences are, and which one will best suit your project. Check back in for lesson 15, where we'll be creating a jQuery mobile project and seeing how we integrate the two frameworks. Ciao!